it is really easy to break and total and roll over and destroy things in the monster truck. But luckily, almost everything, including the engine, can be fixed within an hour. So you can do a complete motor swap within an hour. And that's really quick. I mean, that's record setting right there. But yeah, so they're engineered to be able to work on really quickly. And that's honestly one of my favorite parts is, it's not just driving, but the adrenaline you get from thrashing to put these trucks back together in order to get back out there it's exhilarating. It's super fun, and being able to figure out what's wrong with it and figure out how to fix it fast. You're running all over the place, throwing bolts and tools everywhere, and it's a lot of fun.
Welcome to Her Drive Podcast, a female-focused interview series with women of the world discussing their road trips to success. I'm your host, Cran Blatt, a travel expert, business owner, and curious spirit with a knack for meeting fascinating women. Please join me as I hop in the passenger seat and chat with these ambitious women about what drives them, twists and turns, and those pedal to the metal moments. Let's drive. Hey everybody, welcome to Her Drive. Today's guest is super fun because not only is she a woman with drive and ambition, but she is also a woman who works in the auto industry, monster trucks, is a mechanic, and I'm super excited to welcome Kristen Mik. How are you? Welcome to Her Drive.
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure, and this is not our first time chatting. One time before, and the entire conversation just like went into, I don't know, somewhere into the cyber universe and completely was munched up and out there for the aliens to enjoy. So we're recording again, but I'm really honored to actually chat with you again, Kristen, dive deeper into your story and obviously allow the audience to hear what you have going on. So can you kind of walk me through what it is that you're doing that is so interesting in your work and also kind of like pre-COVID with the monster trucks?
Yeah, so just kind of a little bit about me and the kind of stuff that I do. I'm currently 24 years old, married to my husband, Nick. We are currently business owners of a mobile mechanic service in Asheville, North Carolina, and we've been doing that since 2020. And before that, and still kind of here and there to this day, we were full time into monster truck racing since I was about 19 years old, and I had been volunteering with this industry since I was 16 years old. And since 19 years old, I've been crewing and working on and driving monster trucks, just racing them and traveling all over the country. And so that's kind of my background, is just motorsports and automotive related. Anything, that I could take a wrench to is I'm into it.
Wow, that's so interesting. And why is it that that mechanics and cars are so interesting to you? Like, do you have a background in it, or how did you get into that?
Yeah, I think it's just it's enjoyable to me because of the way that my mind works. I just like problem solving, and understanding how things work is really important to me, more than just mechanical objects, but basically everything in life. It made me a really curious person. But combining those two things, along with the fact that I grew up working on cars and tractors and equipment with my dad growing up. He was a farmer. He also was a business owner, owned tow truck companies and things like that. So just growing up in that kind of environment, I think, has kind of shaped my passions today.
I love that. So, what was kind of your trajectory into first volunteering into the monster truck space? And did you have the objective of one day wanting to be a driver, or were you just curious about the show?
Yeah, so it started out I was just a fan of the sport. We always would go and watch shows here and there all throughout growing up. And we started going to the Monster Jam World Finals, which was held in Las Vegas. I grew up in California, so it wasn't too far for us to go. So that's something we made kind of a yearly family trip. And I just remember, like, in particular, after coming back from one of these world finals, uh, my sister and I, we were talking with my parents who've always really pushed us to do whatever we wanted to do, and they never put limitations on us. We were just talking with them about, is it something that we want to get into? And, obviously we wanted to get into it with the aspect of, eventually becoming drivers, but we were into all sides of it. So we just decided this is something that's attainable and let's go for it. Let's put in the work and see where it goes. And that led to helping teams out just in the background for about 3 years. And that looks like, after the shows, helping them take the big 66-inch tires off of the monster trucks and putting on little tires so that they could fit in the trailer. It looks like, fueling them up and cleaning them up for, pre-show pit parties and stuff like that. So we did that with several different teams over several different states over that time, and just really got to make a lot of good connections. It was something that we were doing completely for free just for experience, and that went a long way within the industry, and people took notice, and that's what kind of led to me being able to move into that full-time hired position.
And what was there a specific moment where you met someone and they're like, "Yeah, I want you to be, full time with us." What was that like?
Yeah, so um I did have an opportunity, my sister as well, to drive mini monster trucks. And, a lot of people were just rooting for us within the industry. But specifically, there had never been a girl or female in my position where I wasn't directly related to or married to or anything like that, anybody in the industry that already owned a team or drove a truck. So for someone to hire me to go on the road full time, that was kind of like a big jump or a leap of faith, because no one had ever done that. It's usually just guys. And so I remember, meeting a team owner, J.R. McNeil, and he's a great guy. He has the biggest heart you could ever find, and he had a vision to say, you know what, girls belong in this industry, and more than just driving and showing up and looking pretty and greeting fans, but actually, women do belong here to be able to work on trucks and uh, you know be a part of the industry. So he had that vision, and he asked me to come to Florida and test drive their trucks and to see if it would be a good fit. And then I test drove them that summer. And then that winter, he hired me to go on the road full time, crewing for the trucks. I was on a team with all of the crew guys. We were all, there was three of us, and we were all 19 years old, born in 1998. And, most of us were complete rookies, had no idea what we were doing. And we were just kind of thrown to the fire, and we went on a Monster Jam Triple Threat series, crewing for two trucks at the time, and that looks like every single weekend back to back for 3 months straight, and doing over, I believe, over 40 shows in that time.
Wow, that is a lot of work, a lot of energy. How interesting. And can you, for people who've never been to a monster truck show or they don't know what it entails, can you describe a bit of what that experience is like?
Yeah, for sure. So Monster trucks, if you're not super familiar with those, they are basically combining the best of off road technology with high horsepower motors and transmissions and all that good stuff. And they're capable of jumping more than 40 feet in the air, going up to speeds of 100 miles per hour. And the shows typically consist of racing. It could be side by side racing uh, in different forms, and or also just timed racing. And then it'll usually do like a two wheel skills competition where your goal is just to do maybe a wheelie, or we call them moonwalks, where you stand the truck up on the front two wheels and walk it around, and just kind of getting creative with those kind of things. And then the last one that we usually do is my favorite, which is freestyle, which is 90 seconds of just going as hard and as fast and as high as you can.
Wow. Okay. That's a lot. That's a lot of energy, and it sounds like there's a lot of things breaking.
Yeah, for sure. That's and that's another part of just the industry itself is um if it breaks during a show, we try to fix it as quickly as possible so that we're not missing the rest of the show. A lot of these will be points based, so the more consistent you are in points, the better you'll do in the overall season, or you could win an overall event championship, and that's all based on points. And you lose points when you miss competitions. So the goal is to make as many competitions as possible. But it is really easy to break and total and roll over and destroy things in the monster truck. But luckily, almost everything, including the engine, can be fixed within an hour. So you can do a complete motor swap within an hour, and that's really quick. I mean, that's record setting right there. But yeah, so they're engineered to be able to work on really quickly, and that's honestly one of my favorite parts. Is it's not just driving, but the adrenaline you get from thrashing to put these trucks back together in order to get back out there is it's exhilarating. It's super fun, and being able to figure out what's wrong with it and figure out how to fix it fast. You're running all over the place, throwing bolts and tools everywhere, and it's a lot of fun.
The key phrase adrenaline rushing, like I can only imagine how intense that is. 'Cause you're working against the clock. And how many people are typically on a crew?
So, there's actually times it depends on the show and what kind of competition you're looking at in the show. Some teams will have no crew members, and the drivers are their own crew. But typically, you'll see at least 1 to 2 people crewing for a team, because that's a lot just to put on, one guy.
Oh, absolutely. And yeah, how are you supposed to lift parts and things? That's fascinating to me.
Yeah.
uh, interesting. And as far as drivability, how does one even learn the skill sets to like know how to maneuver the vehicle with confidence? Like to put it onto two wheels and not flip sounds terrifying to me.
Yeah, it's a balance in learning as you go, while also not trying to cause a bunch of damage, because learning, often takes mistakes in order to learn. So it's a balance in finding that. And interesting enough, most people will actually uh, the first time driving a monster truck will be in a show, or they'll have, maybe one time they drive it out in a field before they go do a show. So you just kind of like figure it out as you're going, basically. um, but once you kind of understand, how they work and how they move, and because it has front steering and rear steering, which takes a little bit to get used to. And obviously they don't turn as sharp as normal cars, and there's little differences. Once you get used to those things, it really transfers into the whole. But the more experience you have, which we get tons of experience because we'll run, 50 out of 52 weekends of the year most of the time, doing multiple shows a weekend. That gives you a lot of experience to get to know these machines well. So, every once in a while you kind of push your skill limit and try new things, and sometimes, that ends up causing body damage or breaking an axle, but sometimes it ends up turning into a really cool trick. So, it's just kind of a balance.
It seems like such a wild west of an industry. Is that how you would describe it, or how would you
You know,
define?
I guess in some context, it's really like a family oriented type industry, because you have so many different teams, but everybody understands each other and understands what we're all working towards and going through, and so everybody tries their best to help each other out. And a lot of times you see these people, like if you're on tour with a few teams and some staff members and all those kind of things, you see these people more than you see your own family. So it really does become like a family environment. Um, that's how I would best describe it.
That's so interesting. And as far as like the competitions themselves, do each of the drivers like do you have to compete in a certain amount of events, or are you getting points based on each event and then there's different categories? How does that work?
Yeah, so there's it depends on the promoter is what we call it, but for instance, if you're running for a promoter like Monster Jam that does a lot of the football stadiums across the countries and hockey arenas and things like that, typically you'll be on tour for a season, and it'll usually be like a quarter of the year. For the first quarter of the year is our biggest quarter, and basically every team is on tour at that point. And so within your tour, you can rack up points on each truck, each team, and by the end of it, they put all of that together and see who's the overall winner of the season.
That's really fascinating to me. And then as far as like size of the vehicles, what's the average height?
I think they're about 12 foot tall is what they are.
Okay.
Yeah, and then they have like 1,500 horsepower motors, and then two-speed power glide transmissions, and they run on methanol. So they're actually really simple machines, and they kind of have to be so that you can work on them quickly. But they're also simple and complex in the same nature, and how they work, and that they work so well. All the parts work so well together.
Of course. So what would be like one like lesson defining moment when you were crewing during a competition or even just on the road at some point?
Oh man. I remember when I first started, it was really hard because I couldn't fathom, obviously what I was signing up for. But it seems like a glorious life. But when you're getting to the point where you're 3 weeks in and you're not sure if you're going to be sleeping in the semi tonight, or if you're even going to be getting a shower, or you start to take the little things for granted. But that threw me for a loop, because I was like, okay, this takes some grit here. I we've run into a lot of things where I almost every single weekend I was getting a new scar or something like that. And there's a lot that went into it that I was a little bit surprised of. But I was so determined to make it in that industry, that I rolled with the punches, and actually had a lot of fun doing it in the end. It was probably, at some points pretty miserable, but looking back on it in hindsight, it was super fun. I mean, there was one time I can remember where we stayed up 48 hours straight and trying to put trucks back together, and we had done a lot of damage. We had two shows in one day. We did the first show fine. Second show, we did tons of damage, and so we stayed up all night fixing the truck, getting the other truck ready, and the driver had actually hurt himself, and so he wasn't able to compete. But we had the truck ready anyways, and so we stayed up all night, and we were there when everybody else started showing back up. We parked for pit party, did another show, went back to the hotel, grabbed a shower, and then did another show that next day, and then finally went to sleep. And that was like, okay, this is it kind of moment. Like, this is what we're getting into. But it was a lot of fun too. So those are the kind of really memorable, defining moments. And interesting enough, it was, the more defining stuff is, I think, for me, or the more happy, fun stuff was for crewing on the trucks rather than just driving them. Most of my driving memories are like either really good, like, oh, I won this show or I won this competition and it went really well, or oh man, I really messed up and now my team has to deal with, all these problems and they're not going to sleep tonight. So it could go either way. It's been either way a lot of times.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. And when did you leave the industry? What happened there?
So 2020 was a year for shaking up a lot of things for a lot of people, but the beginning of 2020 was my first year doing a stadium tour. Before that, I was doing small arenas, but obviously, stadiums, you have more room, and they do less shows in a weekend, so it's like everybody wants that. Everybody wants the stadium tour. That's the best situation you could get. And so I did the stadium tour, and I had the blessing of being able to work alongside my husband Nick, which I met through the industry, and we had gotten married in 2019. And I'd been able to work with him side by side all the way up until that point. We had to split and go to different tours so I could do the stadium tour. And that year, I don't know why, everything, I think it's maybe because partly 2020 was a curse, and partly I needed it for me to be able to do some self evaluation and reflection. And you know I began to really realize things were just getting really, really difficult. All the shows were not going in the right direction. And then all the way up until COVID, we were in Michigan when we got the news. Everything was shutting down. We were not sure if we were going to do that show this weekend. And then we end up in Detroit when we get the news. The show's been canceled. And so that pause was just what I needed. I know, like, COVID was an absolutely terrible time and it's super sad, all of the things that happen to families and people um, through the pandemic. But it was also a good time for me in that getting that pause. I was able to reflect on a lot of things. And even though I really loved the industry, I loved being able to do what I did. I love racing. I love, thrashing, the adrenaline, all of that kind of stuff. I realized that my entire life was, consumed by it. And having that breather really opened my eyes as to where do I want my life to go? What direction do I want to go? What do I want my life to be built on? And so we began to start to step away from it a little bit, and we just did some kind of weekend warrior stuff during the summer when it started to come back. And we'll still do shows every now and then. We'll go and we'll fly in and just do a weekend here and there. But that's also the time we decided to open our business, and in the summer of 2020, so we were kind of doing both side by side, and now we're really leaning more into the business.
And in your time of reflection, what were some things that came to you?
Yeah, so that's kind of it's a heavy question, but I would say that the biggest things were I was more consumed by my reputation, by pride, I'd actually become kind of miserable working with some certain team members. And I don't think you're supposed to spend that much time with people that are your family or you're married to, where you don't have a choice not to spend that much time. But it got to the point where there was a lot of things I just realized I was unhappy with about my life, even though, on the outside it was going great. You know, 21 years old, living 10 minutes from the beach in New Smyrna, Florida, being able to travel the country, doing my dream job, getting to race monster trucks, meet all different kinds of people. And on the outside, it looked really good and I was having tons of fun. But on the inside, I realized I'd become, consumed by these things and kind of miserable. And so I realized, I need to work on me. I need to work on my relationship with God and kind of move into those things. So I just needed to take a step back, really, and breathe from like the whole hustle and bustle of, constantly going and not really being able to think about anything else, but, just make some changes in all of that kind of stuff. And it was really helpful to be able to have that forced break of let's rethink some things here. And there's a lot of good that's going on here, but we need to work on some things too.
Well, I appreciate your vulnerability and sharing. I think so many people also benefited from that time in a similar way. And it just goes to show that, from the outside looking in, many times we think something is so blissful and so good for people. And it might be a blessing in so many ways, but it's not always feeding our souls and God's higher purpose, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, I think a lot of times our culture tries to define what success is for us. And I tried that route and it wasn't truly success because I wasn't at peace. And it just all, even though it's super fun and amazing things, without the right heart motives or intentions behind it, it just kind of leads to a dead end. And so, making sure you're not putting your purpose in your work, but putting your purpose in your identity of whose you are rather than who you can make yourself to be is what I've found to be really transformative.
Wow, that's so beautiful. And do you have any type of like rituals or practices that you do regularly to help you stay in that state?
Yeah, so I like to journal a lot and read and things like that. But I like to start my day out in the word, and then also for our business specifically, I like to do I call them daily business meetings with God, but just kind of what direction do you want to go today and how can I partner with you um, for the things that you're doing in me and around me, and just really trying to love God, love people. And honestly, I've been truly blessed to be able to do what I do, and I get to talk to so many amazing people, whether it's, the people I get to work on their cars and have that personal relationship with, or, even people I meet at monster truck shows during pit parties and things like that. And so, really being able to treasure those types of things and looking for those types of things, it's really, it's helped me put my perspective straight in those kind of things.
Mm, that's really so special. And I mean, you're still so young to have kind of had that like identity type crisis, existential crisis, if you will. And,
Right.
come out with stronger footing and deeper into yourself and purposes is quite
Yeah.
inspiring.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to see where it goes from here, but I believe that, God has really good plans for all of us, and I'm just trying to live those out in the best way I can. And who knows, it might include some more monster truck racing. It might look a little bit different, but every day is an adventure, and I'm just glad that I get to live life to the fullest, truly. and now not really dealing with those issues of pride, and trying to control my own reputation and all those kind of things. It was really not freeing at all. So moving on from that and getting to do all of those same things, but with different intentions and motives, and yeah, it's really special to me.
It sounds it. I am curious though, like when you say like protect your reputation, what does that look like, or what did that look like?
Yeah, so that's a good question. For me, it looked like, so my reputation personally was, even though I was a girl, I had cultivated this reputation of everybody knew that I worked to get where I was at. I wasn't just handed it because, like I might have something else that other people don't. But so I had that reputation of, that to protect, of, I worked hard to get where I was at, and I continued to work really hard, and everybody could really see that. And I was determined, I was kind, I was polite, I would go the extra mile, those kind of things. And so constantly just trying to force things to go really well, I guess, in order to protect my own reputation. Sometimes that would even come out in, like, you know, I would be really dedicated to something trying to go really well in a show, and, kind of uh, ended up not intentionally, but putting other people down for my own purposes, and trying making sure that other people weren't, you know, so to say, messing up what I had going on. And that's just not healthy at all. And, it didn't really matter that much about what people thought about me. And that really was the crutch of it all, is I wanted to make sure, everybody had good thoughts about me and things like that. And that's not mine to control or try to uh, make people think of. I need to work on my own character, and not working on what other people think about me. And so that's kind of how that showed up in my life, was just making sure, you know everything was going really smoothly. The things that I was put in charge of, and working really hard, even, trying to, whatever that looked like, if it was pushing people out of the way or whatever. Yeah, so I don't know, hopefully that makes sense a little
No.
bit.
It does make sense, absolutely.
But yeah, so um yeah, I think, I had to learn really young, there's lots of different definitions of success, and I had a really high thought of what hard work was, or good work ethic was, and it necessarily wasn't right. And so I don't know, I think it's just refreshing when people in those positions that you might even look up to, you're like, I want to do that someday, whether that's, motorsports related, automotive related, or whatever it is. It's kind of refreshing sometimes to, let people know, it's not all puppies and rainbows and all that good stuff. So just being able to learn and grow through that, I still get to do the things that I love, but now I can make sure that I'm loving other people and loving myself through it as well. And that's the real difference.
That's so magical. It sounds like you are probably kinder to yourself in your own mind
Yeah,
nowadays.
I was my own worst enemy. I was really hard on myself. I was suffered from being a perfectionist and workaholic, and so definitely a lot better now.
Well, congratulations. But I must say, I think usually people go through that, and it gets them to a certain level of success, and then you can calm down. You can calm down a little bit after you've, so to speak, proven yourself to yourself.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I'm and the other thing too is, before, I wasn't confident, even though, I would have seemed very confident about who I am and what I'm capable of. But the fact that I was constantly trying to prove that really shows that I wasn't. And now, the fact that I don't need to prove it, that's a sign that I'm confident in what I'm capable of and who I am and those kind of things.
That's beautiful. Well, for people who are kind of in that state right now, what would you recommend that they do to kind of alleviate a bit of that self applied pressure of perfection?
Yeah, make sure your purpose is in the right things. Make sure your heart is in the right things, because passion is great, but and it gets you a lot of places and a lot of things, and hard work too gets you a lot of places and a lot of things and a lot of respect with a lot of people. But both of those things are fleeting, and what I've found is the only thing that really lasts is love. So focusing on that, on those strands of how can I show up authentically and love those around me today, instead of working just for passion or even selfish ambition. Those things don't last, and so just making sure that your heart and your purpose is in the right areas will really help you be able to not fall under those same traps.
I think that's really, really helpful. If you could go back in time and give a younger you some words of advice, how old would you be and what would you say?
Oh wow. When we had this dream of being able to do it, to be able to go and drive monster trucks and work in the industry full time, and when I was about 16 years old, 16, 17, 18, before I got that solid chance, when I was 19 years old, it was really hard to like hold on to hope, because I was like, is this silly? Is this really going to go anywhere? But the fact that we were showing up consistently and, just serving well whenever we did, really paid off in the end, which I didn't know if it was or it wasn't, but I was still doing it anyway. So I would just probably go back to that girl. And that's always such a tough time in life too, when you're making that transfer into a young adulthood and trying to figure out life and all of that stuff. I would just go back to her and I would tell her, don't lose hope. If I would just keep it simple, don't lose hope. And whatever that looks like, even if, the specific dreams that you're looking at don't come true, which I believe they absolutely can, you know, I believe that there's something good coming anyways. So even if things didn't turn out the way that they did, I would still tell her, don't lose hope, because I believe something's good on the other side.
Oh, that's so, so extremely beautiful. I love that so much. So outside of, your business meetings with God, what else do you do that's, fulfilling in your faith and in your business and just for you as a whole?
Yeah, so I've I've been a Christian all of my life. I've been a Jesus follower all of my life. And 2020 is when I really surrendered and I said, I'm going to stop doing this my way because it's not working out, and I'm going to do this God's way. And so these last few years have just been that kind of daily surrender of, God, how do you want to do this? Where can I see you moving in all of this? And that is shaped who I am today. But then also, I've really been able to see some really beautiful things around me, and and things that I would have missed out on. So it's shaped every single aspect of my life. My purpose and my identity, I know, is found in Jesus Christ, and so the fact that it's more than just salvation. A lot of people might be, saved by Jesus, but it's more than just salvation in that we get to live out that life with God, with Jesus right now, here, and we get to experience the benefit and the fruit of his kingdom right now. And it's more beautiful than I knew before, even though I knew Jesus. But when I surrendered to be able to accept that in my life, it really transformed everything. And it's interesting because it's not how I would have made it to be on my own, but it's something way beautifuler than I could have even thought of. So that's it's really transformed every single aspect of my life, and I'm just completely dedicated to living out that kingdom life with Jesus.
Oh my gosh, that is so well said. And I applaud you. And I'm just so curious when you say surrender, what did that feel like? And how does that feel like daily for you?
Well, I think like as humans, we just have a natural tendency to try to control things. And it's not something that we were ever meant to do. Like we have this beautiful gift where we're called to create, we're called to um, make and mold and shape the world around us. But um, we're not meant to control everything, and there's a big difference there. And so taking myself off of the throne of my life so that someone who actually knows what's going on can actually rule it. It seems like it's so hard to kind of let that go and let someone else be lord over my life instead of making the decisions that I feel are best. But it's wisdom in the end to be able to say, no, God knows better, and I'm going to let him take rule and reign in this area of my life. And so that's what it looks like daily for me, is just, little thoughts here and there of like, what? I need to invite God into this situation. I need to, where do I see him ruling and reigning in this situation, and where can I partner with him in that?
Wow, that's absolutely beautiful and makes complete sense. Well, Kristen, I've totally enjoyed our conversation, and I'm so happy you made the time again. um, so, is there anything else you'd like to share before we say farewell?
No, I don't think so. I'm glad we got to chat twice. I get to chat more with you. So.
Oh gosh, and it's even more powerful the second time around. So I think that was like divine intervention for sure.
Awesome.
Well,
Great. I
beautiful.
really enjoyed this time with you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for taking the time to do this. And I think it's really awesome what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. You're a gem. Well, where can everybody find you and find your business if they're in your neck of the woods?
Yeah, so we're in Asheville, North Carolina. And you can find me, probably the best way to find me is on Instagram at Kristen Hope 98. And then our business is Migs Automotive, which is also um, at Migs Automotive on social medias as well.
Amazing. I will definitely link to you on in the show notes and at her-drive.com for everybody listening. Well, thank you so much, Kristen. Have a beautiful evening.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Her Drive with Cindy Cran Blatt. If you want to know more about today's guest or know a fascinating woman you'd love for me to interview, please see the show notes, visit Instagram or her-drive.com. And please, 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 if you love the show, leave a review on iTunes. Thanks for riding along and subscribe to join our next woman and her drive to success.